All right, welcome to part 7. I'm outside this time. Hopefully the road noise isn't too loud. So here I am going through sample FRQ practice questions with you, where I've got the question for you to do it, as well as the rubric, and then me kind of adding to it. So I am finishing up the last one, part D of question number 1, off of practice exam number 2 from this year. So this is the one about cellular respiration and the electron carriers, NADH changing to NAD+, and people who have a mitochondrial disorder or gene mutation that is not allowing them to do that. So all the way down here in D, left off on C, cool, D. So researcher did a follow-up experiment to measure the rate of oxygen consumption by muscle and brain cells. So if we're talking about oxygen consumption with cellular respiration, make this a little bit bigger, we're talking about letting the hydrogen protons come back through ATP synthase. We're talking about letting the electrons go down in their energy level, so having been excited electrons in organic matter, now releasing that energy to the electron transport chain to pump. We now have reduced energy electrons who will join with water and join with oxygen gas and water to join with oxygen gas and the protons with these electrons to make water. So how much oxygen gets consumed is dependent upon how much of the electron transport chain you're doing. It's a measure of the end result of this process, okay? Because oxygen is not used anywhere else. So, and they're saying muscle and brain cells. That, when I read the question, threw me off a little, like, do I need to know the difference between muscle cells, oxygen need, and brain cells, oxygen need? And in the end, no. I was wondering why they did both, and it's because those two forms of cells in the body both consume a lot of oxygen, far more than, say, a fat cell or a skin cell, perhaps. So keep in mind that there may be information out there just to make it a whole and concise experiment and not there to actually looking for content information. So it says, predict the effect of the mitochondrial gene mutation on the rate of oxygen consumption in muscle and brain cells. So if you don't have a properly functioning NADH dehydrogenase to do this arrow here and empty your electron carrier, you're not going to do the end part, right? So you're not consuming a lot of oxygen. You likely are pretty in a low energy state. So the mutation will decrease the rate of oxygen consumption by the electron transport chain. I think that's a great answer. You don't need to be too fancy, but I think of all the things we did learn about, these graphic organizers for cellular respiration and photosynthesis, like that's a pretty detailed answer. Like you can't just say you won't make ATP. Like that's not quite enough there. So justify your prediction. So that's the prediction is one point. Justifying it is now like you made the claim of what you think is going to happen in your prediction. Now, like what's your science justification? What's your reasoning why for that? So the mutation likely inhibits the rate of oxygen consumption because the electron transport chain will be less efficient, so less oxygen will be required as a terminal electron acceptor. That's just more fancy words. I'm gonna italicize that. Nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Editing as I go here, right? Yeah, move over now. Cool. And this would have been a great FRQ as you're reading about the content to like pull your graphic organizer. I will continue to keep posting review stuff, some of which will be the if it's an open note test, what should you have out in front of you? Like what would be handy to immediately have on hand? These are definitely some of them. And the last one, okay, justify your prediction, period. The researcher had hypothesized that the addition of the vitamin that is similar in structure to NADH would increase the activity of the mutated NADH dehydrogenase enzyme in individuals with the disorder. Explain how the vitamin most likely increased the activity of the enzyme. So a vitamin being like a supplement, it's like replacing something that you maybe don't have or don't have enough of. So you may have NADHs that are getting loaded up from glycolysis and Krebs cycle, but your NADH dehydrogenase enzyme is not binding with them well, right? They're not receiving, and the active site might be goofy or something. So if you put in like a different trolley, right, a different shuttle here that's like NADH, maybe the structure is slightly different, but it's still going to release NADH plus as recycling it back to the other processes, that might be workable by your enzyme. So the enzyme had decreased activity, but it still functioned. If you don't have a functioning NADH dehydrogenase at all, like you don't have this enzyme, you're dead. That you don't live at all because none of this happens. I think cyanide affects that, if not one of these pumping across proteins of the ETC. Cell function. Increasing the amount of substrate, so this is this vitamin, should increase the amount of product produced because the vitamin was similar to NADH. It's a supplement that acts like it. It could bind to the active site of the enzyme and effectively increase substrate concentration. So if you provide an enzyme with more things it can work on, it can create more product for you in the end. It's sort of like putting more stuff at the beginning of the factory line in hopes to get stuff at the end of the factory line. And if the initial worker doesn't want to work on product A, will it work on product B to still get the outcome? So that's what was happening in D. All right, that is the end. So this will be here in part 7. So this question is covering videos part 6 and part 7. And I'm going to keep going. I might go ahead and do exam number 3 practice test. I'll look at question 1 and 4 and see if they're usable content for us this year. And if not, I'm going to I can't find it at the moment. It used to be really easy to find, but there are past FRQ student written samples, and like if a question's worth 4 points, here's an example of someone earning all 4 points with their response, earning 3 out of the 4, earning 1 out of the 4, or none. And so you can kind of see the variation in answers and kind of what students were earning. But that's it for now, so keep on studying for your AP test if that's you, and if not, look to the future for an ecology unit in mid-May. Bye.